You want to have greetings all and welcome to the Social Justice Committee meeting. We're happy to have you all here. I'm going to let you take it, but let's let Sarah, you take it, set us off, but let Will give his little speech instructions. And it looks like
give me 2 seconds to get us up and streaming. And then
people
walk
are all
through.
So that's good.
There's still people who have signed up who are not here yet. So, well, welcome everyone. I think most here have been to one of our virtual committee meetings, but in case you haven't or you've forgotten, you'll notice that you are muted and you're going to stay muted throughout the duration of the meeting, except for whenever one of the co-chairs, Sarah or Sandrea, calls on you. So following our discussion, the co-chairs will call on members who wish to speak if you want to speak, you can participate by going to the reactions icon and pressing the raise hand button. It's not the wave or the thumbs up, those will disappear. You only want to press that button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you are calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support only. It is there to help with Zoom software problems. It is not to ask questions of the co-chairs or anyone presenting. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you may need to go to the participant section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you to not raise your actual hand or wave at the screen. Even if it's a small crowd, we still may miss you and we don't want to. So if you're having problems, chat me, I'm here for support. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Sarah and Sandrea, and they can get things going whenever they're ready.
Thank you.
Great. Hi, everybody. Before we get started with today's agenda, well, first, welcome everyone. And before we get started with today's agenda, I want to hand it over to Sandrea for a welcome and some new news.
Okay, well, once again, welcome everybody to our April Social Justice Committee meeting. We're happy that everyone is here with us right now, and those that are most likely viewing on YouTube. So thank you, and welcome. I would also like to announce and welcome our new public member, Erica. So welcome. She's been a phenomenal contributor to this committee since the conception of it. So we appreciate her taking a role on and becoming a public member. So once again, welcome. We're happy to have you, and you can take us away again, Sarah.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and joining as a lay member. I appreciate it. Sarah, I like your glasses.
Oh, thank you. It's one of the benefits of needing readers now.
Ugh.
To see things up close.
Don't even talk to me about that.
Great. Well, welcome everybody. Really excited to have tonight's discussion. We are joined, so today's discussion is about A3103, Assembly Bill 3103, Senate Bill 1826, and it is a bill that's related to minimum wage pay equity for people with disabilities. We are very fortunate to be joined by two experts here. So Assemblymember Seawright has been supportive of this bill, and her legislative director, so that's the person in her office who writes bills, manages bills, and does all of that incredible technical work. Kevin Rogers is here, Kevin will give us a sense of what the bill says and its impact, and anything else that we need to know in order to support our colleagues and community members. And we also have Zach Brodkin here. Zach is an advocate for the community of folks with disabilities and brought this bill to our attention. So we're so grateful for Zach for raising this issue with us, and for Lori for connecting us with Zach, and for bringing us together tonight for this meeting. And so I think we'll start off with you, Kevin, to give us an overview, and Zach can speak as an impacted person afterwards to give us a sense of what this bill means to him and the community of folks who are impacted by this unfair law, or the current existing law.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you to the co-chairs and all the members of CB8 here and all the community members. It's so great to see all of you. So to discuss the bill a little bit, it's Bill A3103, and the official title of it is to amend labor law in relation to the minimum wage for employees with disabilities. So to give a little background on this, for a long time, since the American with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, there's been a provision in labor law, particularly subdivision 5, section 651, which permits employees with disabilities who are part of a program called essentially a workshop program to be paid far below minimum wage. And this is a disability right that strikes right through its core. So as the Assembly member is a proud co-sponsor of this bill along with her colleagues. And essentially what this bill does is it strikes through two provisions that allow it to happen. The first provision, which is in subdivision 5 of section 651, states, in for such religious, educational, charitable institution, if the earning capacity of such individuals impaired by age or by physical or mental deficiency or injury. So that is one section of labor law that permits it. The other section, which is a strike through, is the employment of individuals whose earning capacity is affected or impaired by youth or age or by physical or mental deficiency or injury under special certificates issued by the commissioner at such wages lower than the minimum wage established by this article and for such period as shall be prescribed in such regulation. So essentially what this bill does is it strikes through those two provisions and prohibits people with disabilities to earn lower than minimum wage by ending these workshop programs. So the Assembly member is a co-sponsor of it. The bill is currently in the Labor Committee, where hopefully we'll get some movement and get it out this session. And disability rights groups in New York State support this. A lot of members support this. So now it's about actually getting it moved this session. And the best way you can all help is to reach out to local assemblymen and assemblywomen and let them know the importance and the need for this bill to be passed this legislative session. So that's a 50,000 feet overview of the bill, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you.
Great. And if we could unmute Zach, and then we can take questions after Zach speaks.
Perfect.
So I see your hand up, Boaz.
Thank you. So now that you know what the bill does and how you can help in trying to get it out of committee and maybe even becoming law, I'm just going to discuss briefly how it's not only impacted myself, but impacted the disability community overall. So as you know, we are still coming out of a pandemic where wages have been lost, people have lost their jobs, and what this is all tying together is a negative economic impact on everybody. But to people with disabilities, according to a report by the Century Foundation and the Center for Economic Policy Research, this report was just released a couple of weeks ago. Workers with disabilities earn an average of 26% less than workers without disabilities in 2020. That was at the very beginning of the pandemic. And during that first year, Americans with disabilities were paid an average of 74 cents on the dollar compared to non-disabled workers. And this all stems from a long-standing loophole dating back to 1938 that enables employers to pay workers with disabilities less than the minimum wage. So what this essentially means is if this bill passes, it's not only good for people with disabilities, it's good for the economy as a whole. And with rents continuing to rise, with inflation, increasing costs of food and other essentials, the passage of this bill could make a world of a difference in economic activity, especially in lower socioeconomic neighborhoods like my old neighborhood in East Harlem and other impacted neighborhoods. This bill could make a world of a difference. You might not think that 26 cents is a lot, but when you look at the overall impact the pandemic has had on economic activity, it makes a big difference in economic activity, and also really brings the disability community into another part of our culture where they have been steadily integrating for the last 5-6 years already. So that's how this bill would impact economic activity and how it's impacting economic activity now by not getting out of committee. So as a community, we need to do all we can to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. So I'm really excited that we have questions and hands up already from community members, but I just found out that we are joined by Ryan Dubois from the Human Rights Commission in New York City. And so I'd like for him to be able to speak. And then I see Boaz, Lori, and Rita that your hands are up. And then we'll have the benefit of all three of our experts here to respond to your question. So hi, Ryan.
Hi, yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to be here. Sorry I arrived a few minutes late, just coming from another obligation. So I didn't prepare remarks today. Was there something specific that you wanted me to speak to or provide an overview of the law, or?
Yeah, I guess, Ryan, if there's any activity that's happening at the Human Rights Commission with regard to this law, or if there's any other work that the commission has done with respect to the law, we'd love to know. Otherwise, we're so happy that you're here and that you can hear our community members' questions and get a sense of how our folks feel about the bill and yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure that our policy team is aware of this legislation. Myself being in the Community Relations Bureau, I have not worked directly on it myself. But I mean, I am happy to say that New York City in particular is generally on the forefront of civil rights protections in general and disability rights in particular. We have many challenges, of course, in our city in that regard. But of course, any type of legislation such as this, which would be able to advance the rights of the disability community, is something that we definitely 100% stand behind. We, like I said, we do have robust protections in employment law, as well as across the board for the disability community. But our law also is a living, breathing document that's always looking for opportunities to expand, to fill historical gaps, as well as to address contemporary social and economic developments. So definitely we'll be happy to answer any questions and provide any support that we possibly can.
Great, thank you. All right, Boaz, long awaited question.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you, everyone. Let me start. In general, I'm against minimum wage. I think that it's basically it's causing more issues with the economy than pluses. But because there is already minimum wage, I think it makes sense to include everyone, and it doesn't make sense that there is some kind of a group that is excluded from the minimum wage. My only suggestion is to allow, because again, I'm afraid that adding the minimum wage will basically cause some people to lose their job, because those businesses will not have the money to pay the minimum wage. So my only suggestion is maybe add to the law an option for the worker to basically be able to bypass the minimum wage requirement. Minimum that if you are starting, if you want to go to an internship and basically get the payment will be a knowledge and not by money, but by knowledge. For example, you want to get into the high-tech industry, you want to learn software engineering, and you want to join a startup company that doesn't have right now a fund. The person will be able to join that company, bypass this law, so the company will not break any law by hiring that person. I hope it makes sense, but again, I want to emphasize, in general, I'm against the minimum wage. I can sit down with you for hours and explain why, but if there is already there is already a minimum wage in New York, it makes sense to exclude everyone. So I'm in for the law. Thank you.
So it wouldn't be a minimum wage if you have a wage that's lower than the minimum wage, right? So, you know, I'll move on to Lori next.
Hi. Okay, my question was, and I'm actually a little startled by what Boaz just said, and that might have been the answer to my question. But my question is, what's the pushback? Like who would be against this? You know, I don't understand. You know, how people can't. I mean, talk about a historical. You know, we're talking about like a rule from 1938. It's like, you know, come on. So who would be against this? Kevin, I guess.
Sure.
I'm addressing this too.
Yeah, so the general pushback has been from, you know, some people who are part of the program. They're afraid that if a minimum wage standard is set comparable to New York State, which is where it would be applicable to, then the program in some instances may be seized altogether, and that funding just wouldn't be, you know, existent for it. So that's generally where the pushback comes from, where, you know, people are just afraid that if you put this standard in there, you know, they would just take the program together all together. But, you know, many folks don't believe that to be a true, you know, a true excuse for not, you know, supporting equal, you know, salary for comparable work.
I mean, I believe that, you know, every time there's a discussion about raising the minimum wage, it's like, that's the argument that we always hear. Oh, right. You know, we're going to eliminate jobs. And it never turns out to be the case. It really never does. And it's always people have maintain their employment, and it just goes away, so I just like, I don't buy it, but okay, I just wanted to hear what it was, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Kevin, can you explain what the workshop program is? Because
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with it.
Sure. So disability providers is what they're called, people who provide employment to people with disabilities. Sometimes they're given state grants that make them eligible to have that distinguished title. They essentially are what are grandfathered into something called a workshop program, which under labor law allows them to kind of utilize this loophole where they don't have to necessarily pay individuals with disabilities, the minimum wage set by that jurisdiction. So unfortunately, in a lot of circumstances, it ends up being abused to where, people with disabilities are severely underpaid. So, you could have a $15 employment minimum wage here, and they're paid, maybe $6, something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's helpful. Thank you. Right. Rita, followed by Wendy, followed by Erica.
Actually, Lori brought up my question, which was who's against this? It seems, I don't even have the words, that it seems that this is archaic or whatever. And I've been on the board long enough to know that the thought is that a resolution doesn't get as much attention as a letter. And I would love to have a letter in support of this minimum wage for everybody. I mean, we're just saying it, like zebras, because they have black and white stripes, they can't earn as much as a pony that doesn't have stripes. I mean, I can't believe I'm living in this time zone. I really, really hope that we can put together a very strong letter. These are the people, these people are overcoming so much to go to work, to do work, to live, to pay their rent, to eat and everything. And we're putting rocks in their way. So I hope that I don't want to take away from anybody else, but please, can we write a letter like immediately? Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. And we've got Wendy, followed by Erica. And then I see Lori, your hand is up again.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for this presentation and raising this issue. And I have two comments and a question. One is to Boaz's point. Currently under labor law, businesses with gross revenues of $500,000 or less are exempt from minimum wage laws for any worker. So you need not fear for the small business owner who is, barely hanging in there. And yeah, I think 500,000 for a lot of us would be a wonderful amount of revenue, but that is the law as it stands now. 500,000 or less in gross income, you're exempt for anybody for minimum wage. And the second thing was internships. Under a recent case, I mean, I think it's fairly recent, 2012, the Fox Searchlight, I think it was a case. There was an intern who was asked to do the labor of a paid worker, and he sued because it was improper. And internships are learning experiences, kind of like apprenticeships, in the Middle Ages, but less than apprenticeships in the Middle Ages. You're not expected to do the work of a paid worker. It's a learning experience, and it's quite different than being a worker. Workers get paid, and we, by agreement, agree on a minimum wage and actually try living on that minimum wage in New York. And it is going to be a struggle, even if you can find full-time employment. So I just wanted to lay those two queries to rest about small businesses and about the role of interns and internships being a substitute, because that is absolutely not appropriate. And then I have a question, Kevin, because you said that it would be helpful if we were to reach out to assembly members. And Rebecca Seawright is my assembly member, and I wholeheartedly support her efforts. What can we do even as individuals? I know as a group, we're probably going to come up with something to support this initiative. Kevin, what can we do individually? Does it matter if we're writing individual letters? Is there somebody else we should be writing to? Or are we just preaching to the choir? Tell us how we can help.
Yeah, so, the best way to help right now, especially with, all the chairs setting their legislative agendas, is to reach out primarily to Assemblyman Abate, who's the chair of the Labor Committee where this bill is, and to communicate with his staff, just how important it is. So I would, at this point, channel a lot of your energy into reaching out to his office.
Can you put the contact information in the chat so we can click?
Yeah, of course.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
of course.
Thanks so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Wendy. And I know that a lot of nonprofits that have typically not paid interns in the past are trending to paying internships, because even though interns and workers have a different status, that internships are still work, and it privileges people who are able to who have a different economic status to be able to do unpaid internships when that benefits their resumes, and structurally creates more privilege, and so I guess if we were talking about a letter or a resolution, that I wouldn't be in favor of having any carve outs, because I think carve outs can have the impact of being coercive, that you can have this internship, but only if you waive. So that would be a concern that I would raise. Erica and Sandrea wanted to ask a question, and then we'll go back to Lori.
So Kevin, I have a question. I didn't necessarily hear the first part of it. Are these bills to close this loophole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they strike through the provision in labor law, the loophole that allows these employers to take advantage of people with disabilities.
And the grants that you were referring to for organizations that are still, are largely hiring people with disabilities, where does that grant money come from?
It's typically federal money. So the money would be allocated from the federal government. Yeah.
That's ludicrous then, because minimum wage, I'm super confused by all of this. So where exactly, what is the status of it? Is there enough support? Because we know that the leaders won't put it out unless they 100% have the support for it. So where is the...
Yeah, so internally, I know that this is something that they plan on conferencing, probably within this week. Now, the question is whether or not this is going to meet, the priority of the chairs and of the members who have bills on the labor committee. So we should have a clearer picture of, at the end of this week where this bill stands. There is strong support for it, of course. On our side, we have a separate bill, but it tries to accomplish the same thing, where the equal rights protection, expands protections for people with disabilities. In the New York State Constitution, we expand protected class. So, we've been working with, a few assembly members' offices, and this is certainly one of them where we're trying to achieve the same goal, and how we can, meet meet where they need us. So, there is support, and, it just takes more push from people, constituents like yourself, reaching out to their office. It certainly works to hear, head on from people.
So where is Abate on this?
He has not moved it out of committee. We're trying to figure out why. But it just really takes people pushing him. He hasn't given a clear reason why he's against this bill, or not against it, but just hasn't, moved it out of committee.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah. Hey, Peter, welcome for coming in. See you, Peter Patch. My question is to Ryan, because we cannot have you here and not ask you something. So what would the steps look like from your office if an individual that is experiencing these disparities when they contact your office? So can you walk us through the steps, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there's multiple ways to get in touch with our office. So you can call 311 and ask to speak with the Commission on Human Rights if you didn't have any of our direct information. You can also call us directly on our line so I have access to the chat here. So I'll put in the chat our phone number as well as our website. So you can call our legal department. Info line specifically is a team in our legal department that receives calls. You can call them directly. Oftentimes, just for awareness, sometimes folks are not able to answer the phone directly just because of the volume of calls that we receive. So you would just be directed to leave a voicemail, and that's a perfectly accessible way to file a complaint. An attorney will return your voicemail when they listen to it. So just leave a brief description and your contact information. You can also file through our website, nyc.gov/human rights. There's a tab that says report discrimination right on the homepage. So basically, once you get in touch with our legal department, someone from our info line team will determine whether the complaint is jurisdictional on the basis of, in this case, disability or any other protected class. As well as the jurisdiction. So is it in employment, housing, etc. Once we determine that it is jurisdictional, then we would proceed with a legal case. Most of the time, we're actually able to reach a settlement without actually litigating. If we do have to litigate, then it could be, a process of a few months. Very complicated cases can sometimes take up to a year or two, but that's usually not the case. So that's a really brief overview of what the process looks like. I'm definitely happy to answer any more specific questions if you have them.
Thank you. Thank you. That was a good walkthrough. So people can know that they have access to you all on the legal side as well. Thank you. So, to you.
Great, thank you. Lori, followed by Rita.
Hi, pardon me if I don't express this as clearly as it is in my head, but I'm just thinking about classes of people that we pay less for doing the same work that the rest of us do. And I thought, well, I think prisoners are paid like, pennies on the dollar to do some sort of, manual labor. And in my mind, it's like, and we can talk about like whether or not somebody deserves to be in prison or deserves to be a prisoner. But the point is that like people who are in prison, the idea is that we're punishing them, and I don't think that we want to do that with people who are disabled. I mean, it's just, it kind of blows my mind that like there are these two classes of people that we allow to pay less than the rest of us. And like one of them is disabled people who are there through no fault of their own, and prisoners who may or may not be there through no fault of their own. But anyway, I hope that you get what I'm saying. It's like, I just think that it's just inexcusable. And we just have to bring this up to, 2000 and whatever this is, 22, it's like, we're still dealing with a 1938 law. Like, hello, this is enough time, And the ADA is like another, 50 years old. It's like, so let's get it together. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. And Rita, before we go to you, can I ask Kevin, in terms of effective outreach from your position, do you think that, would you recommend a letter or a resolution by the full board?
I'm gonna leave that in your court. I know letters have been effective before. So, I think a letter in this case would be very effective, but I'll leave it in your court.
Okay. Rita, thank you.
What area in New York State is the chairman of this committee?
Peter Bate is from the 49th district, which is downstate. I think that might be around Brooklyn area. Let me confirm that with you though. Yeah, Bensonhurst, Dyker Heights, around that area.
Thank you. I think that not only should a letter go to all the assembly and state legislators, but I think that one should go to the local newspaper in Bensonhurst, where this chairman is. He's getting paid to do a job, and part of the job is to take care of the disabled people. And we let people get away who are in a position to make a difference. We let them get away and slide. And maybe because I'm just getting older or whatever, nobody seems to be culpable for their actions. He's got to get that bill out of committee. But maybe his constituents should know that he's not doing his job, that he's not helping people who need his help. So I'm for writing a letter, our normal letter to all the elected officials, but I am also for sending a letter to whatever the local newspaper is in Bensonhurst or to the Times or whatever. This is terrible. This is terrible. I can't believe that, we can't give enough. We're sitting here watching the world disintegrate in front of us, and we're thinking, what can we do? What could we do? These are people who are living in our community, and they need help. And we should give them help, and we're not giving it to them. So I need to get this. I'm not a belligerent person until 5 minutes ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita. Will,
Yeah. I also think a resolution, would be appropriate too. I think a full board resolution would be just as effective in this matter.
Okay. And Will, I don't think that I've ever heard of placing a letter in a media publication, at least by the community board.
So standard issue, and can you guys hear me well? I had to switch headphones.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The standard issue that the community board produces is a resolution. A letter is something that we use if we can't get a quorum of our full board, and it really should only be used as that. The resolution is the vote of the full body that then becomes a public document, and it is actually sent in the form of a letter. So all the whereases go addressed to somebody, and we ask for their action or their office's action. So it is still a letter, but it is a resolution that is voted on by the full board. And so once they're created, they become public documents. Often what will happen is a reporter will pick up that public document and write an article saying, you know, local community board supports blank initiative. And so I don't think that we've ever, you know, well, obviously we wouldn't like pick out an ad and place it because that's probably overtly political. But you know, if there's you know a publication, the Brooklyn Eagle or whatever that's local to that jurisdiction, you know, we can obviously, you know, anyone can, you know, send a copy of the resolution because it's a public document to the you know that publication and you know see if they're interested in, you know, writing an article about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes, oh, sorry. Sometimes we do have reporters on our meetings, like even with the Social Justice Committee, and they have reported
time,
back
yeah.
like to news and stuff like that. So yeah. So yeah, just the fact that we are hosting this, having this discussion, and if we do a resol or a letter, it can definitely get to media in that way without us actually trying to pass it off.
Yeah, and having worked in an elected official's office, elected officials' offices have press secretaries and comms directors who will then take that document that like the community board creates, and then that's what that entire person's job is to get coverage on issues that the elected official really cares about. And so they will then go and, you know, start peddling that resolution to the reporters that they talk to and that they work with. And maybe even you get a bigger article that, you know, goes to the New York Times or goes to somewhere else that really highlights the matter at hand, whatever the issue that you're trying to advocate for as the elected official. So this, in this case, the legislation itself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Will. That's really helpful. And as lowest rung of the city government, I do think that we need to, I think we have to avoid overtly political strategies. I will, Zach, your hand's up.
Yeah. So one thing that I did as an advocate was I would send letters to nursing homes and to jails, prisons, and to colleges, encouraging them to have their voices heard and to make sure that they vote. We can take that concept and apply it to getting the word out about passing this bill and or giving people facts so they know about this issue and can raise it, since some of them are dealing with getting subminimum wage themselves. And another idea that I have is Kathy Hochul just created, I believe it was in February, the Office of the Chief Disability Officer to advocate on behalf of the disability community. Could we possibly take this issue of subminimum wage up with that office and have her create an enforcement mechanism if the bill doesn't get out of committee, or if it takes longer than it should to get out of committee? You know, is that something that we could do?
I think if we do a resolution, it can go, since she has that office, it should go there. Yes, definitely go there. But we have to, yeah, I would say yes with that, but maybe Will or Sarah can answer further. But that's a start, right? Because there is an office dedicated to it. So that's what we can actually, when our resos are CC'd out, we can include her office, that office. so they can have a look at it and see, because we're still waiting on the bill to be passed or not, so.
Right. I agree with you, Sandrea, that there isn't a law for her to enforce yet. But they, I suppose, because I don't know who the chief disability officer is. But to definitely draw their attention to the bill and to show that we as Community Board 8 are paying attention to this and want them to prioritize this particular issue.
They could be watchful. They'll be watching, looking at waiting to see what happens with that bill. If it's not in their, eyesight right now, who knows? It should be if they have that dedicated office, right? It should be, but who knows?
Yeah. Thank you for raising that office, Zach. Boaz, see your hands up.
Back to the question regarding the grants, and I just want to make sure that I connect the dots. So if I connect the dots right now, the federal government provide grants to a business to hire, to help them, basically programs to hire people with disabilities. Now, the question is there those grants are, I guess, funding? Maybe I'm wrong, funding the wages for people with disability. Does the new minimum wage, now that we are bringing it up, is the grants will go up as well? I mean, is the New York state will help fund, help with the grants? Is there like a money, or I'm going to the wrong direction? I just want to, I see that a lot of people are in shock that what I'm hoping, that this new minimum wage is not going to make the situation even worse, where people that really need for this money will lose their job. And if there is a grant involved, I just want to make sure that all the dots are connected, that the program is still there, and if needed, I don't know, the New York State will give some money behind it. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe this is why the bill is stuck. There is no funding for it, just throwing it out.
So I can take a crack at that if you want. Okay. Yeah, so the money that I think organizations are allocated, I'm not sure how it's broken up exactly, what the percentage is of what goes to salary, what goes to operational costs, things like that. I don't think it's principally used, solely for salaries. I think it's more of an incentive to, give organizations a, kind of an incentive to hire people with disabilities, which is, I think, the original intention of it. As far as New York State supplementing it, I'm not entirely sure if there's a program that currently exists that does that. I can do a little digging and get back to you on that. But as far as it being an issue on, actually allowing minimum wage, I mean, that's not entirely, these are self-supporting businesses. And as far as that, being an issue on why they can't provide minimum wage, that can be debated.
And Boaz, it looks like you have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So that's my direction. I just want to make sure that those business will not lose their incentive, because eventually it's all about money. I know that I want to give a disability. I want everyone to get additional grants and so on. But I think that you are all connecting the dots. I mean, we are telling on the state level, we are telling, okay, we are going to certain people will, they will get the minimum wage, they will get an increase in their wages, but the grants that those businesses are getting are staying the same. And maybe those business, that's how business work. Maybe they will lose the incentive to keep those. So we need to make sure that, that people will not lose their job because of this change. and that we are closing the loop. That's what I mean. Okay, thank you. But sound like we are going to the right direction.
I really appreciate the law that Wendy raised about kind of the level of economic productivity that that businesses that have a profit of under 500,000 are already exempt from the minimum wage law. And so so the impact of this law will, and Wendy, please correct me if I'm wrong, will not be borne by the small businesses that are struggling to get by, that it would likely be businesses that have the resources to be able to properly pay the minimum wage. Is that right?
Yeah, as I
up.
understand it, if a business has a gross annual income of 500,000 or less, they are exempt from those particular laws. So it raises an interesting point. I mean, I suppose that there could be protections about hiring and firing, really about firing for wage reasons that put into the legislation, but I don't think that is how it's drafted currently.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Okay. So, seeing no other hands, we have this question of letter or reso, but we can have the reso made into a letter, and it could be distributed to the range of elected officials that we've talked about, which include the commissioner, I guess, of the Office of Disability Rights, or whatever that office is. If I didn't get that right, the chair of the Labor Committee, and our other elected officials. And before or someone could make a motion. Oh, sorry, we've got clarification from Will.
Could I just ask Kevin if he knows where this stands in the Senate?
Yeah, so it's currently in the Labor Committee in the Senate too. It does have a sponsor. Give me a minute, I can tell you who it is. But it's the same deal. It's in committee.
And so if you're sending it to the chair of that committee in the assembly, you could also send it to the chair of the committee for the Senate.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah, so STAC is the sponsor, and it's currently in the Labor Committee as well.
All right. I see Erica's hand is up.
Can you drop his contact details into the chat too? Because I just wrote to Abate and figure I'll just send him the same email.
Absolutely, and I'll put the chair, Jessica Ramos, the chair of the Labor Committee in the Senate, her contact info too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Will, for Kimberly Hill's information. Great.
Lori has her hand up, and Zach. Lori?
Or you should be able to.
Hi, yeah, I got it. Hi, yes. I'd like to make a resolution. Let's do it. Let's make a resolution, and I'm not used to doing this, so correct me if I am wrong, but I would like to make a resolution that supports this bill in the elimination of a minimum wage for disabled workers. Is there anything else I have to say? Anyway, that's it.
I can second it. Can I second it?
Yeah,
Sarah?
and Rita also seconded it as well.
So we're rolling.
You're rolling. Yeah. Lori, did you have anything else to add?
No, that, I mean, I think I've said, you know, what I need to say. It's like, this is just amazing to me that we're even talking about this now. It's, you know, and since we're talking about 1938, I mean, was that the same time that they eliminated child labor? I mean, you know, come on. It's like, yeah, okay. That's it.
Thank you, Lori.
It was Zach and Wendy.
Yes. Go for it, Zach.
Yeah, so this is wonderful. I would also like to add that 9 states have passed bills that end subminimum wage for people with disabilities, with I think Tennessee being the most recent state to do so. And it's funny how this has been a loophole since 1938, because guess who was in office in 1938? Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Really was America's, I don't want to say the first one, but the first president with a physical disability to let it be known to the world before disability was even an idea in the American conscience. So I think it's funny that this law has been around since the time he was in office. But I think you know, going to the media is crucial, because the point is to, well, it's to pass this bill, but to also start a conversation around not just ending the subminimum wage for people with disabilities, but just about the impact that people with disabilities can make in different areas, whether it be in the economy, in education, in healthcare, in race and gender and orientation issues. Because really, when you look at it, there's so many issues that are intersectional to the disability committee, and the pandemic has brought to light so many of those issues, whether it was subminimum wages, whether it was online learning, childcare, not just for parents of disabled children, but disabled workers who were childcare workers. So this could start a conversation on the impact that people with disabilities make on many, many issues that we are facing and that the pandemic brought to light. So I'm really happy to see that New York is another seed that's going to help this grow.
And can I just make a suggestion to anybody that's on this Zoom or watching YouTube now or later? Once the resolution goes through us, and if and it should gets passed through the full board, it will be published on our website. Somebody can pull it down and shop it to the media themselves. They're welcome to do that, you know. So that just keeps us in the areas we supposed to be as a community board.
So far, some whereases that we should be including. I really like the 9 states that you referenced, Zach, and surely we can do as well or better than Tennessee. If you have a reference for those 9 states, that would be great. And then the point that you made, which is that we're losing the contribution and the richness of thought from an entire community of people when we don't make sure that they can be included in the workforce. And so thank you for raising that point, Zach. All right, Wendy?
Hi, this is a small drafting point, but when we are talking about the particular classification of workers, perhaps we can be mindful of using the term workers with disabilities rather than disabled workers, because they're workers.
Yes.
And they need to be seen through the lens of being workers and being respected as workers, and they happen to have disabilities, which is why they need to be recognized for the protection that they've been denied. The history of how this came about is really very long. And, you know, it might be interesting to note that the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act came about because Latino boys were being branded as having a learning disability simply because they did not speak English, because they didn't come from English speaking homes. And so the idea of testing and norms and all of those protections came in really as a racial discrimination event. Event is really not the right word, but you know where I'm going with this. In 1938, Roosevelt actually was doing a progressive thing by having people recognized for their abilities as being workers and offering employers and incentives, because otherwise they were shunted off into warehouses and asylums. And it was a gruesome and horrible thing to do in a horrible period of American history. And we've made progress since then. And now we are participating in that next step of progress. So I just wanted to say, how could that have been? The irony of having President Roosevelt be around and participate in that era. It's in a different context and is part of a chain of recognizing human rights. Not far enough in those days, and perhaps not far enough now, but it's part of a chain. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you for that context. And thank you also for the reminder that we should always be using human-centric language, and that language and terminology are really important. So thanks for that, Wendy. Rita?
I was able to choose fulfillment houses at Nabisco, and then when I went out on my own and Nabisco was still my client, I still kept those houses. My criteria was that it had to be a fulfillment house that used handicapped people. And I will tell you, in all the years that I used them, and the name of the company was Trawanio up in New City, that I have never, ever had one mistake or anything on any national or local project. It was a pleasure to work with that company. And if other people tried it, they would see the same thing. I know they would. Just, it exists, and it's good.
Thank you, Rita. And Wendy just shared with us that that workers with disabilities is a term that we should be using in
Yes.
in describing this community of people.
Thank you.
But thank you for sharing that. Great.
Sarah, I would look at the ADA's website to see how it's referenced, but working in health communications for nearly 30 years, I've been trying to push the lexicon of people living with. So you're not diabetic, you live with diabetes. I have MS. MS is not me. I live with MS. I'm a person living with MS.
Thank you.
So, you know, patients, the word patients has always been somebody laying in a hospital bed who can't advocate for themselves, but they are still a human being and they're still a person. So language and vocabulary makes a huge difference. And one word can make a huge difference in if something is moved forward or not.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand potentially to use worker in this because it relates to, you know, specifically what this is about. But I would pop onto the ADA site and see because they have tons of vocabulary and stuff there. But I think in anything that's done, people living with or people experiencing is the way to describe it.
Thank you so much for that. And I absolutely agree that language and even one use has a huge impact. And we will do that before we finalize this resolution. Okay. All right. So I have a whereas that this Assembly and the Senate are contemplating bills to end subminimum wage for people living with disabilities, and a whereas on how 9 states have passed it, and we'll look it up. So we'll have all 9 of them listed there. And
They're in the chat. So
they are.
you can either copy and paste it or it was from Zach.
Awesome. Thank you. Super. And then a whereas on that without pay equity, that we are losing the contribution and the richness of the perspectives and from an entire community of people. And is there anything else I should be including before the final resolve, where we support the bill and we urge the legislators to move the bill out of committee and to pass it into law?
Yeah.
And the governor to sign it.
I'm sorry, Will?
I said, and the governor to sign it.
Yes. Law and governor. Wonderful. Rita.
Rita, go ahead and mute.
Do we need to take a vote? I'll call the question.
Thank you. Yes. And I'll second calling the question.
All right, I'm gonna lower everyone's hands. And if you would like to vote no, abstain, or not vote for cause, we ask you to raise your virtual hand and we'll ask you to explain your vote. Give it 3 more seconds. Looks like it's going to be unanimous. I'm just going to read the names so that they're in the record. Sarah Chu, Sandrea Coleman, Erica Gerson, is that right? Okay, thanks, Erica. Lori Boris, Peter Patch, Rita Popper, and Wendy McCaber. Don't think I missed anyone.
Did you say Erica?
I did, yeah. And I
Okay,
had
sorry.
to check her last name.
Yes, he did.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So since we didn't get an opportunity to write out the resolution here, what I'll do is work on it so I can properly cite it and all that good stuff. And for the folks who were who are on the community board who were voting on the bill. Sorry, it's been such a long day.
It's okay.
This resolution. I'll run it by y'all so you can make sure that your vote is being attached to something that that you approve of. And we'll get this all done so early that Will won't have to remind me to send in the minutes. and then we can have it for our next community board meeting. And so if anyone is interested in speaking out about this resolution at our May
Full board meeting. Mhm.
something full board meeting.
May 18th, full board
8.
meeting. Sorry, I actually had to look it up myself, but it's on our May calendar's on our website if you want to click it.
Awesome. That you can sign up for the public session that kicks off our full board meetings to speak about this resolution and to encourage the entire community board to pass it. And then we will have a powerful statement on behalf of all of Community Board 8 to go to all of these elected officials who are going to move really fast on state. Great. Alrighty. So we still have new business, old business. So is there, or actually we do old business first. Do we have any old business?
No, but I would just like to, I don't know if I'm out of order or not, but this was a good meeting and I'm grateful. And I am a person also living with disabilities. So, and I'm not working as of now because of a workplace accident, but this is, I haven't had the experiences that some have had because I am new to this since 2015, but it's good because this is just something that is needed. And, I just want to publicly just, thank everybody for their participation and so forth. I know it might be a little out of order, but go ahead, Sarah. I just wanted to get that in.
No. Thank you. And sorry, I didn't mean to move on before everyone has had the opportunities to say what they wanted to say. Okay, great. And if there's no other hands, then any new business? Alrighty. Rita.
I was wondering if, let me back up for a moment. There used to be a teenager on the community board. Her name was Sarah, and I can't think of her last name. She went off to Yale. She did a very important project on recidivism and also in giving people jobs. I don't know if you remember who that was. She did it at Hunter, but at any rate, there was one that stuck in my head, maybe because I do love brownies, but there was a owner of Greystone in, I believe, Mount Vernon, New York. And the woman who is in charge of that bakery only hires women who have been incarcerated. Their recidivism rate is absolutely zero. Incidentally, they make all the brownies for Ben and Jerry's ice cream. I think we should be tasters, but at any rate, but there must be other people where I think even if what's going on in Rikers Island, we're letting people out, they have nothing to do, they get back in. It's, are we bringing to light, there was a movie by Richard Moore. It's called What Country Do We Invade Next? And basically he showed how criminals are treated in Europe. They're taken in and they're given, they become chefs. They're working with knives. They don't go home. They don't live in bars in a cage or barred existence. We shake our head, but of course there isn't the gunfight, the gunplay in Europe that we have here. But can future meetings talk to how we can do better, how we can help not having recidivism, and then eventually, hopefully, that whole area drains out. Just a suggestion. Thank you.
Great, we will definitely look into that. Yes, definitely. That's up my alley too. So, right, Sarah, you too, right? Like
Yeah.
Lori will be calling on you too, Lori. And you, Erica. Let me not stop calling everybody out, but you all know it's a good topic. We can solidify and bring in a meeting. Yeah. This year, definitely. Thank you, Rita.
Lori, followed by Peter.
Hi, I wanted to fill in a couple of blanks with what Rita said. The bakery is in Yonkers, and the reason why I know that is because I'm from Mount Vernon, so I know that I know Mount Vernon things. So it's in Yonkers, and 60 Minutes did a fabulous piece on them way back when. Sarah Solomon was the name of the woman I think that you were talking about. And there was a third thing. What was the third thing I was going to say? No, I don't remember. Anyway, I was just bringing it into just filling in the blanks.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, so when we have an in-person meeting, we can assess the brownies when Greystone Bakery comes. All right, Peter and Zach.
Yeah, I just like to second Rita's comment. The reason I was late for this meeting was I'm on the board of a nonprofit based in Boston, but they do work actually around the country, and that's one of their areas that's hugely important. I mean, I've been with them for 10 years. I still don't understand the subtleties and the nuance, but the basics are, as they come out, we have to give them. They have to have an opportunity for employment. They have to have a support network. Hopefully, any drug issues they have are sort of being managed and under control. But anything we can do to support, what I come to call, although some people use different language, offender reentry is hugely important. So second that, and thank you, Rita.
Thank you, Peter. And Zach, I think you're going to close us out.
Yeah, so I have been living in this community for a little less than a year. I moved here in June after searching for an apartment for 8 months. But honestly, I've just really come to love the community. Between the many chains of restaurants and the independently owned stores and shops, it's really a nice balance in this neighborhood. And I'd like to thank everyone who welcomed me with open arms because this community is now home to me. So thank you all for your support, and hopefully I can work with you in the future as a community board member.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zach. And we are lucky to have you. We are lucky to have you. Fantastic. I do want to say before I send it over to Sandrea that in May, we are going to do a meeting on the Don't Say Gay bills that started off in Florida and have proliferated throughout the country. And so I can't take any credit for it. It's an awesome idea that Will suggested, and he's helping us find people to present to us. And so it'll be helpful to know by end of May, I think we'll have a sense of where these bills were introduced and what happened to them. And the impact that I'm sure they're already having. in communities across the country, and especially to LGBTQ community members and especially teens and children, and how that impacts their ability to express themselves. So very excited for that. And Sandrea, over to you.
I don't know how this happened, but this is how we do, right? We open, we close, we play around with the rotation. But yes, so thank you everyone for attending this meeting. Special thanks to our expert guests, Kevin, Ryan, Zach, just giving your experiences, giving your work experiences, giving your legal experts experience and what you're doing in the bill. And thank you for everybody that has contributed into this meeting today. So we did pass a resolution, so we're happy about that with this committee, and we're onward to the full board committee to see it passed as well. With that said, looks like, do we have our Assemblywoman on here? Looks like she's here. Do you want to say anything? Assembly member, see, right? I see your picture. Want to greet everyone?
I think that's Kevin's.
Her?
He's just
okay.
his camera off.
So okay, because the camera. Okay, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, is she here now? Okay, all right. Well, she gets a plug anyway. We appreciate her. So anyway, can we have a motion to close?
I see one from Rita and a second from Lori and Peter and Erica.
Everybody, all right. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.